Today's topic is you see meninges. You know meninges is the outer covering of the brain and spinal cord. Outer covering of the brain and spinal cord is known as meninges, right? Now there are three layers. There are three layers from outside inwards. They are Dura mater. First Dura mater. Then next arachnoid mater, and innermost layer is Pia Mater, right? Out of these, Dura mater is most thick and tough. Dura mater is most thick and tough. That's why it is also known as pachymatter, P-A-C-H-Y, pachymatter. And arachnoid mater and Pia mater, they are thin and transparent, delicate. That's why they are known as leptomeninges. This is pachymatter, outer tough Dura mater, also known as pachymeninges, and this inner two layer as very thin, and lepto means thin. They are also combinedly called leptomeninges. Out of these two delicate layer, the arachnoid mater, it is avascular. It is delicate and avascular. Delicate, transparent and avascular. Now innermost layer, that is Pia mater, they are also transparent, delicate, but they are highly vascular. And this Pia mater, they enter into the sulcus. What is sulcus? Here you see it is wavy in figure brain, this part. Somewhere it is raised, somewhere it is like wave. This is known as sulcus, and this raised area is known as gyrus. Gyrus and sulcus. The deeper area is known as sulcus and raised area is known as gyrus. And here you see the Pia mater has entered into the depth. That means it has entered into the depth of the sulcus, right? But arachnoid mater, they do not follow. They just breathe over the sulcus, right? You remember this. The sulcus will intimately invest the brain, and it also enters into the sulcus, right? Sulcus. And but Pia mater does not enter into the sulcus. Now here some space has been created. Here you see, in relation to Pia mater, arachnoid mater, the deep to arachnoid mater, there is a space. That space is known as subarachnoid space. This space is known as subarachnoid space, and this space is known as it is Dura mater, so it should be subdural space. Subarachnoid space, deep to by internal to the arachnoid mater and external to the arachnoid mater, but deep to the Dura mater. This space is known as subdural space, and outside the Dura mater, this space is known as extradural space or epidural space. Extradural space or epidural space, right? Subdural, second is subarachnoid, subdural, and epidural, epidural, subdural, subarachnoid. These three space is very important. You should be asked, this space lies between which layers? Because during the introduction of the anesthetic agent, sometimes it is given into the epidural space, sometimes it is given into the subarachnoid space. Now this Dura mater becomes folded. They becomes folded. Dura mater becomes folded and forms some structure that is known as, you will see after the removing of the brain, within the cranial cavity you will see the falx cerebri, falx cerebelli, tentorium cerebelli and diaphragma celli. These four things you have to see after removing of the brain. What are they? These four terms that I just told you, what are they? Tentorium cerebelli, falx cerebri, falx cerebelli and diaphragma celli. What are they? They are actually folding of the dura mater. In case of cranial cavity, dura mater consists of two layers. One layer which lies in contact with the bone, that is known as endosteal layer of the dura mater. Endosteal layer of the dura mater. যখন বলবো না লিখবি তাহলে মনে থাকবে, এরকম হাঁ করে বসে থাকলে না কিছুই হবে না, একটা মনে থাকবে না। Diaphragma celli. Endosteal dura mater which lies in contact with the bone. It is like periostem of the bone. It is the periostem of the cranial bones. Right? You should jot down, otherwise you will not remember it. Now, what are the utility of this fold? What it does? Now, here you see this space. This layer is the dura mater. Here you see dura mater has been split here. One layer that lies in contact with the bones, this is a bone, that is called endosteal layer, and deep to the endosteal layer, this layer is known as meningeal layer. So here they have been separated and form a space. That is space known as dural venous sinus. Dural venous sinus. How dural venous sinus is formed? You will be asked, how dural venous sinus is formed? I have already told you that the dura mater consists of two layers. One layer lies in contact with the cranial bones and other layer lies deep to it. When these two layers in some places, they will be separated and form a space. That is space known as dural venous sinus. What is the difference between the dural venous sinus and normal veins? What is the difference? In dural venous sinus, in the wall of the dural venous sinus, you will get no muscle layer. You will get no muscle layer. But in case of vein, you will get muscle layer. And there is no valve in the dural venous sinus, so blood may run in both directions. But in case of vein, in some veins there are some valves, right? So this is the venous sinus. There are so many dural venous sinuses, you should learn it later on. Now come to the other modification of the dura mater. Here you see, this is the endosteal layer of dura mater. This is the meningeal layer of dura mater. It has been separated here to form the venous sinus, dural venous sinus, and this folding has spread deep into the brain, and it has divided our brain between the two brains, right and left cerebral hemisphere. It lies as a dural fold. That dural fold is known as falx cerebri, and it lies between the two cerebral hemisphere, so it is known as falx cerebri. Falx means sickle shaped. It is sickle shaped. It looks like actually it is look like this. It is sickle shaped fold. This is known as falx cerebri. Now another fold that lies between the two lobe of the cerebellum behind. They are also sickle shaped. They are known as falx cerebelli. Falx cerebelli. Another layer of dural fold lies transversely between the occipital lobe above and below the cerebellum. In between cerebellum and posterior part of the cerebral hemisphere, or posterior part of the cerebral hemisphere is the actually occipital lobe of the cerebrum. So it lies between them, and it is crescent shaped. It is crescent shaped. It is crescent shaped like this. It is crescent shaped. This is known as tentorium cerebelli. Tentorium cerebelli. Tentorium cerebelli. Diaphragmatically, it roofs over the pituitary fossa, sella turcica. It roofs over the sella turcica. It is known as diaphragmatically. So these are the four modification of the dura mater, right? Now come to the arachnoid matter. Not only brain but spinal cord is also covered by the dura mater, meninges. Spinal cord also covered by the meninges, but there is a little difference between the meninges of the brain and meninges of the spinal cord. In brain, you have seen the dura mater consists of two layers, endosteal and meningeal. But in case of spinal cord, there is no endosteal layer. That endosteal layer, after covering the inner aspect of the cranial bone, it will stop at the margin of the foramen magnum. Here it will stop, and it will be continuous with the outside. Outside lies the periosteum of the cranial bones, so it becomes continuous with that. Only meningeal layer descends and covers the spinal cord. So in spinal cord, you will get only meningeal layer. You should remember this, only meningeal layer. But in case of brain, you will get Dural mater consists of two layers, endosteal and meningeal, right? Now this, so here also, in case of a spinal cord, the space between the dura mater and arachnoid mater is known as subdural space. Arachnoid mater, pia mater, subarachnoid space. But in case of a spinal cord, it carries some importance. Why? Why the subarachnoid space in a spinal cord? Why important? For lumbar puncturing. You should sometimes tap the cerebrospinal fluid for therapeutic purpose or for diagnostic purpose, right? And that's why it is important, right? Now come to this subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space in spinal, you know, the spinal cord ends at the level of the, where it ends? At the level of the transpyrotic plane. Spinal cord in adult, it extends up to the transpyrotic plane. Transpyrotic plane means between the lower margin of the lumbar vertebra, first lumbar vertebra. So up to the lower margin of the lumbar vertebra it extends. And beyond that, what lies? Beyond that what lies? जहाँ पे एंड हो गया, एंड होने के बाद बियॉन्ड दैट माने बिलो द lumbar one vertebra, what lies within the vertebral canal? Cauda equina, very good. And covering क्या होगा? Subarachnoid space, it extends. Subarachnoid space extends up to the cervical, up to the sacral second vertebra tak this subarachnoid space extends. Usually, now, so up to this level, both dura mater, pia mater, arachnoid mater that are present there. Now, beyond that, beyond the second sacral vertebra, the only pia mater covered by some layer of dura mater extends up to the first coccygeal vertebra. But there is no space, subarachnoid space is not there. Only the pia mater covered externally by some dura mater extends up to that level, right? So this is the arachnoid mater. Now apart from this subarachnoid space, apart from containing cerebrospinal fluid, what are the other contents? Subarachnoid space আর কি থাকে? Blood vessels, nerves, all lies within this space, subarachnoid space, right? Now this there is somewhere this subarachnoid space, in some places in our brain, this subarachnoid space becomes enlarged and forms cistern. When the subarachnoid space becomes enlarged, they become known as cistern. Cistern. Now, at which places this cistern lies? At which places this cistern lies? Here you see. One is cisterna magna. Cisterna magna. Magna means magnificent. बहुत बड़ा. इसलिए इसका नाम है cisterna magna. Where is the position? What is the position of the cisterna magna? Posterior surface of the medulla oblongata and inferior surface of the cerebellum. यहाँ पे जो angle है, that angle, here lies the cisterna magna, right? Now, here you see, look at this picture, brainstem. Brainstem consists of midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. Midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. Here you see, this is the midbrain, this is small area, then pons, then medulla oblongata, right? Now, here you see, this part is known as corpus callosum. This part is known as corpus callosum. Actually, after the completion of the brain, you will better understand it. Now just try to understand as much as possible. When the brain will be shown to you, then you will understand it clearly, right? Now this part is known as cerebellum. So now other cistern where lies? Here you see in front of the pons, this one, cisterna pontis. In front of the pons, that is called cisterna pontis. Like now here you see behind the midbrain here. Behind the midbrain, here you see, this is called cisterna ambiens. Cisterna ambiens. Above the corpus callosum, that's why it is known as supracallosal cistern. From the corpus callosum, one thin lamina terminalis extends up to this, that is called optic chiasma. It is called lamina terminalis. So this cistern is known as cisterna lamina terminalis. And in case of optic chiasma, in front, this cistern is known as pre-optic chiasma by pre-chiasmal cistern, and piche it is called post-chiasmal sulcus. So these are some of the cisterns, right? Out of this most important is cisterna magna. Now you know the CSF lies within the subarachnoid space. The CSF, is it a static fluid or it is circulating? Circulating. Now from where it is being found? From which structure actually forming the CSF? And how it circulates? You should know this. Number one, here you see, look at this picture. If you can understand this picture, everything about venous sinus, about the circulation of the CSF, how it is formed, it will be clear to you. Here you see this dotted line, it is the Pia Mater, right? And this space is known as ventricle of the brain. Within the brain there is some space that is called ventricle. That ventricle is lined by ependyma. So ventricle is lined by the ependyma. Ventricle is lined by the ependyma. Now here you see this continuous line is ependyma, and dotted line is Pia Mater. Here this fold, here you see it has been showing fold of the Pia Mater, that is known as stella choroidi. This is known as stella choroidi. And here you see within this stella choroidi, this is structure, this is the plexus, that means blood vessels. So it is within this stella choroidi, and whole thing is known as choroid plexus. The whole thing is known as choroid plexus. Here you see choroid plexus, outside it is lined by which membrane? Here you see by this picture, you see, here you see outside line क्या है ये? First there is innermost line is the ependyma, then just outside ependyma there is Pia Mater. They become fused to form one single layer, and they are covering this venous plexus. So whole thing is known as choroid plexus. Why choroid plexus is important? It is the choroid plexus which is forming the CSF. If you are asked from where CSF fluid is coming, it is the choroid plexus. How it is formed? It is the venous plexus covered by two layers, ependyma as well as Pia Mater. They actually form to single layer and they surround this venous plexus and form the choroid plexus. From this choroid plexus, CSF is forming. Now after forming this CSF is not a static fluid, it is circulating. Now how it circulates? Now here you see, you look at this picture here. Here you see, it is a coronal section. This is the lateral ventricle. These are two cavities within the cerebral hemisphere known as lateral ventricle, and in between two thalami, or there is another space that is known as third ventricle. This is the third ventricle. This arrow is indicating third ventricle. Now this is the midbrain. This space is known as aqueduct of the cerebral aqueduct. Cerebral aqueduct is passing through the midbrain, and this enlarged space below is known as fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle, it lies behind the pons and medulla. Fourth ventricle. And here you see there is some opening. There is two lateral opening known as foramen of Lusca, and there is median opening, that is foramen of Meningeal. Now after formation cerebrospinal fluid within the ventricle, from the lateral ventricle it will come to the third ventricle. Here you see, it is the lateral ventricle. From the lateral ventricle it will come to the third ventricle. This opening is known as foramen of Monro. This opening is known as foramen of Monro. Foramen of Monro. Now from there it is coming to the third ventricle. From third ventricle it will come to the cerebral aqueduct or aqueduct of Sylvius, that is the tubular path between the midbrain, and it is coming to the fourth ventricle. This is the another space behind the medulla oblongata and pons. From there it will go outside which space? It will go to the subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space. You know subarachnoid space contains CSF. From that subarachnoid space it will spread all over the subarachnoid space. It will go over the cerebral hemisphere, subarachnoid space outside the cerebral hemisphere. Now how will this CSF, after entering the subarachnoid space, then how it will go to the blood? এটা তো শুধু ব্রেনের মধ্যে ঘুরবে না, তো তোর কন্টিনিউয়াস তৈরি হচ্ছে। আর যদি if it is not mixes with the blood, then একসময় তো ব্রেন তো ফেটে যাবে তৈরি হতে। So how it goes into the blood? How this CSF goes into the blood? Now look at this picture. This picture, here you see these things. These are called subarachnoid granulation. Here you see subarachnoid granulation বা subarachnoid villi. When villi join to form granulations, that subarachnoid granulations opening into the venous sinus. Now this CSF is coming through this is the path, subarachnoid space. Now it entered into the subarachnoid granulation by subarachnoid granulation, and from here it will come into the blood. From here it will come into the blood, right? Visually, here you see this space is the subarachnoid space containing CSF. From here it is coming here. This is the subarachnoid direction. From here it will diffuse into the venous sinus. In this way, from subarachnoid space it will come into the venous sinus, dural venous sinus. So if you are asked to, sometimes question will come like this, where cerebrospinal fluid is formed, it is, where it is formed? It is formed choroid plexus. It is formed in the choroid plexus. From choroid plexus will come into the ventricles of the brain. Lateral ventricle, third ventricle, they contain choroid plexus. So CSF will come into the choroid plexus, from choroid plexus to third and lateral ventricle. From there, they will go into the fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle through which path? Through the path which is traversing the midbrain, that is called cerebral aqueduct. From there, it will come outside, from the ventricle of the brain. It will come outside, subarachnoid space. That subarachnoid space lies at the level of the. Here there are three openings: two lateral opening, one mid-brain opening. Through this opening, it will come into the subarachnoid space. Now, from the subarachnoid space, how it will enter into the venous sinus? Here you see there is arachnoid granulation. Through the arachnoid granulation, it will enter into the venous blood. In this way, it will circulate. Clear? Is clear? नेक्स्ट एग्जाम पूछेगा, ठीक है? देखो किताब अगर पढ़ लो. Here you see, this arachnoid granulation has come out of the industrial layer, and it has indented the bone. Bone indent করে দিয়েছে দেখ. And you must have seen it in the স্কালে পড়ায়নি, কালে দেখায়নি, arachnoid granulation এর এগুলো দেখায়নি. Remove this picture, that is larynx, very important picture, this larynx. Here you see how many muscles of larynx, how many muscles are there in larynx, how many bones are there in larynx, I mean cartilage. कितना cartilage है? बोलो कितना cartilage है? laryngeal cartilage कितना है? No, very good, fine. बोलो नाम बोलो, ठीक बोला. थोड़ा थोड़ा याद है, लिखोगे तो ना याद रहेगा थोड़ा बहुत. इसमें 3 paired and 3 unpaired. 3 unpaired क्या है? ये करो, ये क्या है? सबसे बड़ा यहाँ पे ग्लैंड रहता है, क्या नाम है ग्लैंड का? बड़ा ग्लैंड हमारा थायराइड, तो थायराइड कार्टिलेज, तो थायराइड कार्टिलेज है. देन थायराइड कार्टिलेज के नीचे ये क्रिकॉइड, थायराइड है क्रिकॉइड, ठीक है. और एक कार्टिलेज है अंदर, दैट इज कॉल्ड एपिग्लॉटिस. एपिग्लॉटिस, दे आर अनपेयर्ड. और एपिग्लॉटिस, इसमें क्रिकॉइड कार्टिलेज इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, इट इज़ अ फाउंडेशन स्टोन ऑफ द लैरिंग्स एंड इट फॉर्म्स अ कंप्लीट रिंग. कोई कार्टिलेज नहीं है जो कंप्लीट रिंग बनाता है. थायराइड कार्टिलेज पीछे तो ओपन है, ऐसे है, लेकिन पीछे ओपन है. लेकिन ओनली दिस कार्टिलेज क्रिकॉइड फॉर्म्स अ कंप्लीट रिंग. इट इज सिग्नेट रिंग शेपेड. तो अब जो रिंग होता है ना, रिंग में ये पे चौड़ा होता है, एक चौड़ा होता है, उसका कहते हैं लमाइना. तुम्हारा देखो रिंग में ये जो है, ये है, पीछे रहता है वो, और सामने उसका आर्च, सामने को उसका कहेगा आर्च, और पीछे वो जो क्वाड्रेंगुलर पार्ट जो है उसका कहता है लमाइना. उसका ऊपर रहता है 2 इंपॉर्टेंट कार्टिलेज, एरिटिनॉइड कार्टिलेज. एरिटिनॉइड कार्टिलेज यहाँ पे देखो, हमने ड्रॉ किया एरिटिनॉइड कार्टिलेज. देखो ये जस्ट एक सैजिटल सेक्शन है, सैजिटल सेक्शन. ये पीछे साइड है, ये एंटीरियर साइड है. ये देखो, ये जो है क्रिकॉइड कार्टिलेज, उसका ऊपर जो है ये है एरिटिनॉइड कार्टिलेज, और ये जो है यहाँ पे है ये है एपिग्लॉटिस, राइट. नाउ हाउ मनी मसल्स आर देयर? 9 कार्टिलेज, 9 मसल्स. मसल्स भी 9 है, राइट. तो फ्रॉम दिस पिक्चर you can see how many muscles. Number 1, this muscle, this is called क्रिकोइड से जा रहा है एरिटिनॉइड, as it is at the lateral aspect, so lateral crico एरिटिनॉइड. एरिटिनॉइड से जा रहा है एपिग्लोटिस, एरी एपिग्लोटिक मसल. थायराइड कार्टिलेज से एपिग्लोटिस जा रहा है थायरो एपिग्लोटिक मसल. ये तीनों मसल यहाँ सबको दिखाया जा रहा है. आउट ऑफ दिस which muscle is called safety muscle of larynx? Which muscle is called safety muscle of larynx? बोलो. Safety muscle of larynx. लिखो इसे खाता से लिखो तो याद रहेगा थोड़ा बहुत. इसमें कुछ नहीं होगा, इसमें ब्रेन में रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं होगा. सबका एक सेफ्टी मसल है, सेफ्टी मसल ऑफ टंग, इसलिए वो उसका सेफ्टी मसल ऑफ लैरिंग्स. ये तो इम्पोर्टेंट है, तो क्वेश्चन देते हैं. सेफ्टी मसल ऑफ लैरिंग्स शॉर्ट नोट. समटाइम्स एक्सप्लेन व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड सेफ्टी मसल. पोस्टीरियर बोलो. क्रिकोइड के कहाँ जाता है
सर? एपिग्लोटिस को कवर करते हैं.
जो बताया तुमने ठीक बता रहा है. पोस्टीरियर क्रिकोइड से कहाँ जाता है? एरिटिनॉइड जाता है. एरिटिनॉइड का एक मस्कुलर प्रोसेस है लैटरली, वहाँ पे जाता है. इसका नाम है पोस्टीरियर क्रिको से एरिटिनॉइड जाता है. पोस्टीरियर क्रिको एरिटिनॉइड. दिस मसल व्हेन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स इट विल एबडक्ट द वोकल कॉर्ड. एबडक्ट तो उसमें स्पेस होगा. अगर ये पैरालिसिस हो जाएगा तो ये एडक्ट हो जाएगा. और एडक्ट हो जाएगा तो तुम्हारा हवा ढुकेगा नहीं अंदर, तो यू विल फील सफोकेशन. इसलिए इसको कहते हैं सेफ्टी मसल ऑफ लैरिंग्स, बिकॉज इट इज़ द ओनली एबडक्टर मसल ऑफ द लैरिंग्स. क्रिको एरिटिनॉइड, पोस्टीरियर क्रिको एरिटिनॉइड. एंड अनदर मसल हियर वी सो लैटरल क्रिको एरिटिनॉइड. उसका फंक्शन जस्ट ऑपोजिट है. वो एबडक्ट करता है और वो एडक्ट करता है. राइट. नर्व सप्लाई ऑफ द लैरिंग्स. नर्व सप्लाई ऑफ द लैरिंग्स. 120 स्टूडेंट्स नाउ बिजी फॉर देयर रिमेडियल एग्जाम. सो इसमें कोई ध्यान नहीं दे रहा है. अच्छा, वन इम्पोर्टेंट अनाउंसमेंट. एक क्वेश्चन हमने बता रहा है आपको. क्वेश्चन मीन्स ये नहीं ओनली फ्रॉम लोअर एंड अपर लिम्ब, ओनली एमसीक्यू विल बी गिवन. ओनली एमसीक्यू विल बी गिवन. ब्रॉड क्वेश्चन है ये, हमको बताना है. तो बहुत छोटा हो गया तुम्हारा कोर्स. ये नर्व सप्लाई, ये आपको याद रखना है. ऑल मसल्स ऑफ लैरिंग्स आर सप्लाइड बाय रिकरेंट लेरिंजियल नर्व एक्सेप्ट व्हिच मसल. यहाँ से जाता है क्रिकोइड से जाता है थायराइड, क्रिकोथायरॉइड एक्सेप्ट क्रिकोथायरॉइड. इट इज सप्लाइड बाय एक्सटर्नल लेरिंजियल नर्व. सेंसरी सप्लाई above vocal fold, it is supplied by internal laryngeal nerve, and below vocal fold it is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. ये याद रखना. And why vocal fold is called watershed line? Because upper part supply laryngeal nerve, internal laryngeal, lower part recurrent laryngeal nerve. upper जो artery है superior laryngeal artery, नीचे पार्ट इंफीरियर लैरिंजियल आर्टरी. अपर लिम्फ नोड जा रहा है प्री ट्रैकियल लिम्फ नोड, नीचे जा रहा है पैराट्रैकियल लिम्फ नोड, प्री लैरिंजियल लिम्फ नोड अपर, नीचे जा रहा है पैराट्रैकियल लिम्फ नोड. दैट्स व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड watershed line. Now vocal fold and vestibular fold, there are two folds. If you see inside the larynx, three fold actually. From the area epiglottic fold, then you will the vestibular fold, then you will find vocal fold. Now how will you differentiate? Through laryngoscope. जो laryngoscope से दिखाया जाता है ना, तो कैसे लगता है? In case of vestibular fold, it is কি কালার রে? vestibular fold কিরকম দেখতে লাগে বল? vestibular fold কেমন দেখতে লাগে? How it looks? লাল, নীল, সবুজ কেমন লাগে? কিছুই করে না, শুধু যে করে আর কিছু বুঝতে পারি না। সবসময় একদম মানে ধ্যানে বসে আসিস মনে হচ্ছে আর কি। হ্যাঁ, vocal fold there is no submucous coat, so ওটা লাগবে pearly white, but vestibular fold contains submucous coat, there is vessels, so it looks pinkish, ওখানে অনেক ব্লাড আছে, ব্লাড থাকলে পিঙ্কিশ লাগবে। আর এখানে কোনো নেই, সাবমিউকাস কোনো নেই। তা হাউ ইট ইজ লুব্রিকেটেড, হাউ ভোকাল ফোর্ড ইজ লুব্রিকেটেড, ওখানে কোনো মিউকাস গ্ল্যান্ড নেই, সাবমিউকাস নেই, মিউকাস গ্ল্যান্ডও নেই। হাউ ইট ইজ লুব্রিকেটেড না হলে তো তো কথাই বলতে পারবে, গলা শুকিয়ে যাবে। কোথা থেকে আসছে মিউকাস? একটা बिटवीन द वेस्टिबुलर फोल्ड और वोकल फोल्ड जो स्पेस है, इसका नाम है लैरिंजियल वेंट्रिकल व लैरिंजियल साइनस। उस लैरिंजियल साइनस का अंदर एक थोड़ा बहुत म्यूकस पाउच है, उसका नाम है सैक्यूल ऑफ लैरिंग्स। फ्रॉम दैट सैक्यूल ऑफ लैरिंग्स उसमें प्रचुर ये है कि तुम्हारा বাঙালিদের সামনে আমি তো হিন্দু বলি, বুঝলি তো, তার কারণ বাঙালিদের তো হিন্দি বুঝতে পারবে না, আর হিন্দুস্তানিদের সামনে আমি বাংলা বলি, ওরা বুঝতে পারবে না দুটোই। ওখান থেকে প্রচুর মিউকাস বেরিয়ে আসে, সেই জন্য এটা বলা হয় ওয়েল ক্যান অফ ভোকাল ফোল্ড। বুঝতে পারলি? মনে থাকবে, স্যাকিউল অফ ল্যারিংস কন্টেন্স মিউকাস গ্ল্যান্ড, ফ্রম দেয়ার মিউকাস ইজ কামিং অ্যান্ড লুব্রিকেটিং দ্য ভোকাল ফোল্ড।